What's up, everybody? I am your host, a small town sheriff who always does what's right, and that is my co-host, an evil government bioweapon set to destroy my small town. And welcome to the Grindhouse Syndicate, where we enjoy high school baseball, farming, and don't trust the government. And today we are covering Breck Eisner's remake of George A. Romero's The Crazies from 2010. And if you can't tell, I am a little bit sick. I was a lot a bit sick, but I'm much better than I was.
You can't tell very much through the mic.
It sounds different to me. I don't know. Through my headphones, I definitely feel like I have sick voice.
Yeah, well, I get that. When we recorded, I don't know, it was a while back now, but when I felt like I had the super deep voice.
Yeah, you did though. I could tell through the headphones when we did that one. I feel like I got like the Lindsay Lohan thing going on. She's got the smoky sick voice all the time.
Sound like our cousin. Been smoking Marlboros for way too long.
Yeah, we've kind of taken turns being sick over the last couple weeks. You know, we weren't even sure if we were going to get this week's episode out because I lost my voice for days, for pretty much this whole entire week. But we got it back just in time, so.
Yeah, we've had back-to-back recording weeks interrupted by one of us completely losing our voice on record day.
Yeah, bad timing.
It's been hectic trying to catch back up.
But we're making it work. So this is like a comfort movie for me. I know we've talked about it before, but when we were young and broke, I had this on DVD and I watched the shit out of it. I watched it a lot. That was back when my DVD collection was much smaller than it currently is.
Yeah, so broke, in fact, so young and broke that it wasn't even an actual copy. It was a burned copy, right?
Yeah, it was a burned copy. A friend of mine basically burnt me a bunch of stuff he had, I assume, illegally downloaded. And just, I don't know, burnt me like a stack. I don't know if you remember, but I went and bought back when they did like blank discs, like the pack where it would come in like a 50 pack or a 20 pack, a stack. And I think I bought like a 20 pack and I dropped it off to him and said, hey, just burn me whatever. Just, something. I don't have internet. I don't have cable. All I have is like a PlayStation, or I had an Xbox at the time. And just burn me whatever you can that I can watch. And he just like burnt me a ton of movies. This was one of them.
I'm pretty sure I had an Xbox and we ran off the same Xbox back then.
An Xbox 360?
Yes,
yeah.
360 before it got the red ring of death.
Oh, yeah, that's right. But yeah, he basically just burnt me this whole entire stack that I brought him. And most of the movies, I don't even think I'd ever seen before. And this was one of them.
Yeah, this is one of maybe 2 or 3 that I remember that was in the stack, and I don't think I had watched this movie since then. So it's been a long time. I was a young teenager at the time. I don't even know if I had quite hit high school.
A young school-aged boy. Yeah, 2010.
It sounded creepy. It sounded like are you becoming a Catholic priest?
So this 2010, man, is a long time ago now. Like, it's weird thinking that 2010 is old, but it is. I mean, this movie's been out for a long time. It's so long, in fact, that so when we wanted to cover the movie, I had to try to find my old burnt copy. Could not search for it. I have no idea what happened to it.
Shit probably wouldn't play anyway.
Tried to buy a copy, couldn't find one. Had to eventually, I think I went to order one and I was like, man, that's too much for that old movie. And I just wanted just a regular DVD version. I think they wanted like $26 for the Blu-ray. And I ended up finding a used copy for like $3. And I said, this is going to replace the old burnt copy. So here it is.
Yeah, I'm sure if you would have found that thing, it probably has it's been through some shit at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would have played.
Yeah, it's gone. I don't know. I have no idea where. No, I normally take care of my movies pretty well. And it was in one of those old like CD cases that had, you unzip it and flip through the book or whatever, and it's just ton of discs in there. I don't know where it went though. But yeah, I was excited to do this movie. I love this movie. You ready to jump into it?
Yep.
But first, if you want to stay up to date on what is going on with us or the show, talk about or submit your movie request, or just say hey, you can always find us at one of our social media accounts or our official website at grindhouse.horror.pod.com, Facebook at the Grindhouse Syndicate Horror Podcast, Instagram at grindhousesyndicate.horror.pod, and many more, which you can find links for in the show notes as always. And please subscribe or follow for alerts on new episodes. And if you really love us and don't want us to have to move to a small town that might possibly be destroyed by the government, give us a review. So The Crazies is a 2010 American horror film directed by Breck Eisner, written by Scott Kozer and Ray Wright. The film is a remake of the 1973 film of the same name and stars Timothy Olyphant, Rada Machel, Joe Anderson, and Danielle Panabaker. George A. Romero, who wrote and directed the original and served as an executive producer, was produced by Overture Films, Participant Media, and Imagination Abu Dhabi. It is about a fictional Iowa town that becomes affected by a biological agent that turns those infected into violent killers. The film was released on February 26th of 2010. It had a budget of $20 million and a box office of 54.8 million. It received mixed reviews according to Metacritic, with the critical summary on Rotten Tomatoes calling the film tense, nicely shot, and uncommonly intelligent. Do they just call all these like zombie type infection films dumb?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Rotten Tomatoes never gives them. I don't think there's really any zombie movies that they give good ratings.
This isn't really a zombie movie, though.
I agree, it's an infected movie.
They're not zombies at all.
Yeah, I've heard the argument with 28 Days Later that those are not zombies, those are infected, and I see that argument, but that argument stands even stronger here. These are not zombies at all. Matter of fact, I completely forgot, and it confused me at a part in the plot that we'll get to, that these motherfuckers like completely are like themselves just wanting to kill people.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
they're out like having fun.
They
doing
drive.
Shit. They probably drink beers together and shit.
I mean, they're out driving around, driving
Yeah.
cars, setting traps.
Goddamn rednecks, instead of hunting animals, they start hunting people.
So, according to reports in 2004, Paramount Pictures was the first studio to attempt a remake of The Crazies. Scott Kozer, who had worked on the remakes of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the Amityville Horror, was hired to write the script. The film was said to be an updated storyline of the original. Around this time, thanks to films like 28 Days Later and Dawn of the Dead, the world was introduced to a new kind of zombie. And although those films were very popular at the time, Scott Kozer and director Brad Anderson wanted to make something different. Unfortunately for them, the studio did not, and creative differences with the studio caused Anderson to drop out of the film. I did see an interview with Breck Eisner where he talked about the original Scott Kozer screenplay, and apparently he said that the reason that they had to rewrite it was because it was really kind of more of an action movie than a horror movie. Yeah.
That's interesting because I touch on that a little bit later. But
yeah, apparently like the second half was just an all-out action movie and not horror. Like he came in and wanted it to be a horror movie and kind of took a lot of the action out and put a lot more of the horror in. And his focus was the infected. Like, we got to make these infected scary.
yeah, that's really interesting because, and one of my complaints about this movie is that it has scary scenes here and there, but outside of those scenes, it's very much like just an action movie with infected. And now that you're telling me they rewrote the script and he added these scenes in here, that makes a lot more sense.
So in 2008, out of the deep, dark hole known as development hell, the Crazies would crawl its way out to the top, being picked up by Rogue Pictures and later handed off to Overture Films, with Breck Eisner set to direct and Ray Wright writing a new screenplay. Principal production began on March 5th of 2009 in Georgia, with settings including the Georgia National Fairgrounds with Priester's Pecans in Perry, Georgia, the Fountain Car Wash in Macon, Georgia, areas in Dublin, Georgia, Peach County High School in Fort Valley, Georgia, and areas of Cordell, Georgia. An additional filming was done in Iowa. So even though you see a lot of Iowa in this movie, man, a lot of it was filmed in Georgia.
Surprised The Walking Dead, they didn't just like send the extra zombies over. They were shooting it like at the next town over.
Yeah, they had to be somewhat filmed around the same time.
Yeah, and they had to be pretty close to each other.
Because I'm pretty sure The Walking Dead came out in 2010. I mean, I could be wrong, but it's right around there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure if it didn't come out in 2010, it was slightly before that, but I think The Walking Dead existed at this time.
You know, I want to say the first season of The Walking Dead I got in that stack of discs. I think that's how we watched the first season.
Been a long time.
So the makeup for the film was designed by Almost Human Studios, and the special effects were created by Robert Green Hall. If you don't know, he did the effects for Angel, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and also the movies Vacancy and Quarantine 2. Vacancy was our first movie we ever covered, wasn't it?
It was
Yeah.
the very first one we ever covered, and nobody will ever hear the first episode.
Oh, it's lost.
It got lost in time, apparently.
The director's one and only rule for the makeup design was that they research in medical books and consult medical professionals for the design of the infected. Lead makeup artist Rob Hall said that if we were to pitch something to Breck about if, one side of his face should look like this, Breck would immediately want to know what disease it came from and what version of reality it could be implemented into Trixie. But the most important thing was to make sure it felt real, make it feel like you could get it too. The basis of the makeup the crew used was mainly rabies, tetanus, and Stevens-Johnson syndrome. Each design had about
Stevens-Johnson syndrome?
Yes. I don't know what that is. I didn't look it up.
Steven's dick got syphilis and he died from it.
It's Stevens with an S, Johnson's syndrome.
Goddamn syphilis, man.
Each design had about 21 sections requiring over 3 hours to apply for the final effect seen in the film. The veins in the eyes were the main focus of the design. The contact lenses covered the actor's entire eyes and required eye drops every 15 minutes to reduce injuries. I did see that apparently they had to hire an optometrist?
Optometrist.
Yeah, so they had to hire him to be on set because of the contacts, and that guy made $300 an hour to put eye drops in. Every 15 minutes.
Well, I guess that PhD served him well.
The film premiered on February 24th, 2010 in Los Angeles and received a wide release in the North American. The film received a wide release in North America on February 26th of 2010. The film opened with $16 million at number 3 behind Cop Out and Shutter Island. By May of 2010, the film has grossed an estimated $50 million worldwide. The Canadian DVD and Blu-ray disc were released on June 29th, 2010. Shutter Island was another one of those burnt DVDs. That's how we seen it.
Yeah, he must have just burned a bunch of the new shit that was out.
Makes sense. That's all coming back to me.
The Runaways came out around the same time.
Look it up. I bet you it came out that same time.
2010, yes.
Yep, okay. All right, so ratings. Rotten Tomatoes, 71%. IMDb, a 6.5 out of 10. Letterboxd gave it a 3 out of 5. And the Google average audience rating is a 4.1 out of 5. It's all pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised by that. What did Rotten Tomatoes give it, a 71?
71.
That's definitely surprising for this movie.
I mean, I think it's up there. I like it.
Well, yeah, I just mean for Rotten Tomatoes. They're
Yeah,
not
that is
they're not
surprising.
normally, like, gory.
Pro horror.
Yeah, not just well, they like the artsy psychological horror type stories. A lot of, like, if it's an independent horror, it's probably got over 71, but anything with, like, zombies or infected generally don't get, over 70.
Oh, this is off topic, but I recently watched the the movie. It's like an independent. What's it? The Color of Space, and it was fucking awesome. Watch that. If you like Lovecraft stuff, watch it. It is great, and it is also a beautiful movie. But it's fucking gnarly, man. You would like it because it's kind of got a little bit of the Void vibe to it.
Hmm,
Yeah,
have to check it out.
yeah, definitely check that out. It's for one beautiful movie, and for two, it's got some gnarly effects in the back half of it.
I don't know, it says horror sci-fi.
Yeah, it
You
is.
know I'm not big on those space horror
It's not
movies.
space.
Okay. Well, it has space in the name, so I just assumed space was
No,
in it.
there's no space in it at all. If you would like to watch,
It got an 86 on Rotten Tomatoes, though. Like I
it's
said,
good.
it's independent films always normally get over
It's
a
been
70.
It's really good, and it's got something in it that you have to see that's awesome. If you would like to watch this movie, you can currently find it streaming on YouTube, Amazon Prime, and Sling TV with premium subscriptions, or you can rent it from Apple, Fandango at home, or Google Play. It's pretty cheap. I believe it's between $2 to $4. So the film starts off with a couple random shots of the small town of Ogden Marsh, Iowa. And we see it has, for the most part, has been destroyed. We got buildings and cars on fire, rubble in the streets, and oddly enough, boots on the cars parked on Main Street. The screen goes black and then says 2 days earlier, and we begin to hear Johnny Cash's We'll Meet Again. As we start to see some much more pleasant shots of the town before it looked like downtown Detroit, we see during these shots that this is a very small town, is made up pretty much mostly of like farmers. I don't know what they grow in Iowa, corn and
Corn.
beans and stuff.
Pretty sure Slipknot said corn.
Yeah, I know they grow a lot of corn, but I didn't see any corn in this whole movie.
I mean, it wasn't corn season.
No, this is right.
Maybe the corn's just growing. Maybe they're
Corn starts out
corns.
small. Yeah, I mean, whatever it is, they're using like tractors. I don't know what the tractors are doing, but we see a lot of tractors here.
They're hoeing the old dead corn so they can get new baby corns.
They're hoeing it.
Hoeing it up.
But the main purpose of this is to show us that it is a small community with a pretty small downtown area where most of the town's like government buildings and shops are. Also, there's just endless fields of farming. We get a lot of shots of just as far as the eye can see what I guess we presume is cornfields. And this is where we start getting introduced to our main characters of the story. We have the local sheriff, David Dutton, and his wife, who is also the town doctor, Judy Dutton. We also have a young teenage girl who works at Judy's doctor's office named Becca, and the sheriff's deputy, Russell. So we then see that basically most of the town has shown up at this high school baseball game. It is the first game of the season, and these people take their baseball seriously. Looks like pretty much most of the town is there. David stands at the fence talking to his deputy, Russell, when suddenly Russell notices someone carrying a gun walk onto the back of the baseball field. David runs out onto the field to confront this person as he orders the team to get into the dugouts, and as he gets closer, he recognizes the man as a local farmer named Rory. He assumes Rory is very drunk and making some kind of mistake. He attempts to calmly talk him into dropping the gun. Rory is looking pretty rough here. He seems very like disheveled, confused, and he has like blood running from his nose. He also looks down at the gun he is holding for a moment before raising it in David's direction. David then places his hand on his pistol and readies it in case he needs to use deadly force in defense. Rory then cocks the shotgun and raises it to his eye in preparation to shoot David, when David quickly pulls his pistol and kills Rory with one shot. One thing I can say is the movie gets into the story fairly quickly. There's not a lot of build up for this story. That's one thing I like about it. I
Yeah.
mean, things don't go like haywire off the bat, but they don't do that like ton of introducing us to all these characters. We really start learning the characters while this story is slowly beginning,
I
which is
think
one thing I like.
I think that's almost a staple of zombie and infected movies. One of the huge things that I like about most of them is they do a lot of times jump right into it and they save the character building for the actual, why everything's going down.
So we then get an overhead shot of the town as we see two military planes fly overhead. After the title card, we jump on over to the coroner's office that happens to also be a funeral home. Small town problems right there. Your funeral home is also your medical examiner's office. Odd. David speaks to the coroner before heading out onto the front of the building to talk to Rory's wife and son. How fucking old is Rory's son supposed to be? He's like, I think he's supposed to be like 17, but he looks like 32. He looks old as fuck.
He grew up a lot having an alcoholic father for so
I
long.
think he's been an alcoholic since he was like 6.
Kid's been smoking crack since he was like 4 years old.
Well, he follows his mom everywhere. His mom like tells him, come on, like she like grabs his arm and pulls him away when she leaves and all that. But he looks like a middle-aged man.
Come on, Dylan.
He's kind of dressed like a teenager too, but he is definitely not a teenager.
The youngest guy they could find on set.
I guess. So David tries talking to Roy's wife and son. It doesn't go well at all. He tells them that he thinks Rory was drunk, but they argue that he has been sober for years, and they accuse him of unjustly killing him before slapping the shit out of him and storming out of the building.
I think they more accused him of he was going around telling people that he had to kill him because he was drunk, when in fact they said that he wasn't drinking, he had been sober for 2 years, which would suck to jump to that conclusion with no evidence and obviously this small town, everybody knows each other. Everybody knows this guy has been sober for 2 years. And now not only is he dead, but his whole like reputation's kind of ruined. But my argument to that is, in his defense, regardless if he was drinking or not, he had to shoot him. It was self-defense. And the whole town almost was there to see it. They seen what happened.
Yeah, I don't blame David at all really from jumping to that conclusion though, because when you get a guy who has obviously a long history of being an alcoholic in the town, he's been sober 2 years. Cool. But then he walks out onto a baseball field with a shotgun. He looks like he's been binge drinking. I mean, that's probably the easiest thing to jump to is like he relapsed and got fucked up. I mean,
it is the easiest. And, I don't blame him for having that in his mind. But if he was, in fact, going and telling people that, that was probably wrong. He probably should have waited for the facts to come out first. But regardless, I mean, most of the town was there to see it. So most of them, don't really have to go by word of mouth. They know what happened.
So the next morning, David gets a call from the medical examiner who informs him that Rory had no alcohol in his system. David protests that can't be, but he then tells him that they ran the test twice and it is accurate. Over the next few scenes, we start to see it's like some of the town folk are starting to act a little strange. They are acting, at this point, they're kind of acting really spaced out. We see Judy take a look at one of her friends, Deirdre's husband, who has been acting strange and even repeating some of the same things. She tells Deirdre that physically she found nothing wrong, but she would like to take him to Cedar Rapids on Monday for a brain scan. Later that night, we see Deirdre looking out of the window towards their barn, seeming very concerned. She tells her son to wait in the house while she goes out to the barn to see what kind of weird shit her husband is up to now. When she arrives, she finds, I don't know what the fuck this thing is, but it is some kind of big farming equipment. I've seen it before. I just don't really know what it does, but it has these blades on the front of it that spin like really fast in a circular motion. I think it's for cutting down possibly like corn.
It is. I believe you're right. It's a pretty much for cutting grass when you have 4-foot corn in your
Yeah,
grass.
it's like those little like the old lawnmower doesn't have an engine that has
Right.
little spinny blades, but it's like way bigger than that.
And I thought we were gonna get an awesome shot of this lady getting cut up in it, because I'm like, why would you go stand directly in front of it in the middle of the night with it running?
This is one of my favorite scenes in the movie because this thing is fucking scary.
It is. It is.
It
Yeah.
looks like a human meat grinder, is what it looks like. It's fucking gnarly.
I wish they would have used it in the way that everybody, when you see this thing and you see her go stand right in front of it, you're like, here we go. But maybe it wasn't in the budget.
I like the fake out though. I wasn't like super I would have liked to have seen it, but I didn't mind what they did because it shows that these aren't zombies. These are infected people that can literally come up with a plan to kill you.
That is true, but had he ran her over with the tractor, that would have showed that he also wasn't a zombie.
Yeah. So anyway, she finds this thing is like running, like it's full speed, I would assume. And she is standing in front of these like spinning blades, yelling for her husband. After she receives no answers, she climbs up into the cab of this machine only to find it empty.
And in my notes, I am now backtracking because I was already typing about how stupid she was and how she got herself killed by going and standing right in front of it. And then
Jump
she
to
I
conclusions.
said, why? I was literally typing, why wouldn't you walk up to the door first? And then as I'm saying that, she walks around to the door.
Yeah, I would never stand in front of that thing at any
Fuck
point in
no.
time. She then shuts this loud ass thing off, and as she's walking around the barn looking for her husband, she then hears her kids scream from the house. So she runs back to the house where at first she can't find anyone. Then her kid comes up behind her and they hide in a hallway closet. The kid then tells her that his dad has a knife. Then they hear him slowly like walking around out in the hallway, checking the rooms for them. He then locks them in the closet that they're hiding in, and we see him begin to pour gasoline all over the inside of the house. We hear Deirdre and the kid banging on the door, trying to escape. Then William then lights a match and sets the house on fire. We then see the house go up in a blaze as Deirdre and her son scream for help, still locked in the closet.
And that's a rough, rough way to die.
Yeah, that is terrible.
Yeah. This was one of those scenes that, I said they added some scary scenes in there that it's very suspenseful when they're hiding in the closet. And you think like, in every horror movie, she's going to look out of the keyhole. He's going to like see her, which is exactly what happens. And then he's going to open the door and kill them. But no, he switched it up. He locked them in there and literally poured gasoline all the way through the house and burned them alive. That was awful.
Yeah, I really like the touch of where he's looking for them and he's got the loud fucking footsteps. I don't know why, man. It just adds to the kind of suspense of the shot because you think because the footsteps are getting louder and louder close to them, and you think, oh, here it is. He's gonna bust open the door, but instead you hear the lock click, and then you're like, oh, this is about to be like really bad.
Yeah, it was really bad.
So David and Judy arrive on the scene of the house fire soon after. The fire department is still attempting to put the fire out, and the lead fireman tells David that Deirdre and their son didn't escape the fire. And when they arrived, the gas can was sitting in front of the house and Bill William was mowing the lawn. I called him Bill William because his wife calls him Bill, but everybody else calls him William. So Bill
I
William.
thought his wife called him Will and everybody else called or William.
Maybe. He's
Yeah.
got two names in here, so he's Bill William.
Yeah, I caught that too, though. His wife called him William and then they referred to him as Bill. But what a time to cut the grass. And why not use
He's lost his mind, man.
Yeah.
He's went crazy. The Crazies. Makes sense.
I
Adds
mean,
up.
but are you really have you really gone full crazy if you could recognize that your grass needs to be cut?
Why didn't he get that big machine out and just cut his grass with that?
Yeah.
That's what I would do. Cut my grass in one shot. Judy attempts to ask Bill William what happened, but he just kind of looks past her and continues humming. The next day, we see 3 hunters walking through some swampland when they discover a parachute tangled in the brush. They make their way over to the parachute and begin to pull at the cords when suddenly the decomposed body of a pilot floats to the surface. He looks great.
Maybe this is just me, but if I seen a parachute hanging in the trees, my first thought is there's probably going to be a body at the end of it.
Yep.
These guys seemed so shocked that there was a body.
Wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I mean, what else would happen in that scenario?
I mean, I'd still look. I ain't gonna lie. I'd be like, well, before I call the cops out here for a parachute, I gotta be sure there's a body there, but I'm pretty positive there's a body there.
Yeah.
Because that would be weird if there wasn't.
I would have poked with a stick or something, though. I would have been
the old poke with the stick
I would have
method.
been so confident that it was a dead body. I would have definitely. Well, if there's a dead body and you're not sure if it's dead, you poke it with a stick. Everybody knows that.
I bet you the poke with a stick method has been around longer than fire.
Yes. Cain actually poked Abel with a stick after he got done killing him.
Yeah. We then see David and Russell and the medical examiner at the scene of the body. David wonders if the pilot is here, then where could the wreckage of the plane be? Russell then informs him that a local resident named Travis heard something like crash out in an area called Huntman Bog. Next, we see Russell, David, and this Travis guy on a small boat riding through the swamp of Huntsman's Bog. Russell thinks this is a waste of time because he very obviously does not like this Travis guy, which is understandable because this Travis guy is kind of a dick.
Yeah. Yeah, he makes a comment that's like, damn. I don't remember exactly what he said. Something about, what if not, you gonna shoot me?
Yeah, he kind of fucks with David about David shooting Rory. Yeah, that was cold. And David took it better than I probably would have.
I don't know. We don't know what David was going to say because he's like, you stop this fucking boat right now. And then right after that, they get distracted. But maybe David was about to whoop his fucking ass.
Maybe. But David then orders him to stop the boat, claiming that the plane must be pretty big because they are sitting right on top of it. We then get a high above shot of the boat, and we can see the silhouette of a very large military plane wrecked underwater. I wondered how David knew the plane was there. And then I think I know.
I don't think David did know the plane was there.
I think he did. Well, he told him to stop the boat, and he knew that they were on top of it.
I didn't think I thought it was the guy who was driving the boat is the one who said, we're sitting right on top of it.
No, it's David. So the reason I think I know is because I watched all the special feature stuff that came on the DVD, and they actually show how they did a lot of the stuff for the movie, the little bit of CGI that they used. And the plane that you see, the silhouette of the plane is CGI. So basically they were actually in the boat in that water, and they did the overhead shot, and then they went in and they added layers of CGI. So they put the plane, and then they put like the murkiness in the water. And then one of the layers they added actually was the oil that had leaked from the plane, which when you see it from the high up shot, it makes the water like shimmer. Like if you've ever seen oil, sitting on top of water. And I would assume that, you're riding in this water and all of a sudden you see the color of the water change to like this grayish shimmer. You know that there's oil there. So I think that's probably how he realized that obviously the plane's got to be here. This is a giant oil spill we're sitting in the middle of.
Or he knew wherever he stopped the boat, they were going to CGI a plane.
No, or that.
Was it.
That's true. We then get one of these like satellite intel plane camera shots. So we now know that the military is aware that the local sheriff has discovered the wrecked aircraft, and we see on the screen, initiate containment protocol.
I hate the above military CGI shots of the map they zoom out on, and Not a fan of those. I thought the movie could have done without all of that.
Hmm.
I felt like it gave away what was going on way too fast.
Huh.
Like, you don't feel that? Like,
Well,
imagine had you watched this movie for the first time and they didn't put that in there, you wouldn't really figure out what was going on. I mean, the military would show up, then you would have a better idea. You would know they were in on it, but you wouldn't really have a full scope until the end of the movie of what was going on. I feel like they kind of tell you right there, like, all right, the government's behind this and they're about to do a whole contamination containment on this town.
yeah, I mean, I could see where that's coming from. I think the only big issue with that is because, of the George A. Romero's The Crazies. In that one, you actually, the interesting thing about that movie is you actually see the movie, it's split in half where you're getting all these shots of like these town folks, what's going on in the town, like this movie. But the other part of it is you're actually seeing it from the military's point of view. So I feel like maybe, that being such a big movie that people, I guess they assumed people just knew what this movie was going to be about. And it kind of didn't really matter much to keep that hidden.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I I understand that, but I would counter argue that probably 95% of people who watched this when it came out had never seen the original Crazies.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's that high, but I could see a lot of people not have ever seen the original Crazies. So David and Russell then rush on over to the local water company, maybe? I'm not really sure what this guy does, but I mean, I don't know. Did you catch what this guy does for the town?
No, I just think he's like somebody who works for town hall. It's like a board member or something.
So he knows about water, whatever it is. But anyway, David asks him where the town gets its drinking water from, and he tells him that it comes from a bunch of connected ponds and streams, that they all get their water from Huntsman's Bog. And the first house that is closest to that area is Rory's farm.
But David figured this shit out way too fast.
He figured it out very quickly.
Yes, like he literally went from a crashed plane to these people are going crazy and murdering people, and because it's in the drinking water, and Rory was first because his farm's the closest. Like, man, he put that shit together quick.
Maybe. Maybe he's David from Vacancy's cousin.
I thought about David from Vacancy a couple times in this movie. I figured it was going to come up at some point because one of the things I do like about this movie is that they don't do super dumb shit like a lot of horror movies. Like, they actually try to escape. They think of quite a few different things. Obviously, the cars are not an option, but they don't do dumb shit. And that reminded me of David from Vacancy. But honestly, I think David from Vacancy is much better. Because I'll tell you this, David from Vacancy, he stayed up all night studying the tape of previous murders. And because of that, he was always one step ahead of everything they were trying to do in Vacancy. Whereas this guy's really good at surviving this shit and like being a badass when he has to. But he's never one step ahead.
I will say, I actually don't think he's a badass because we'll find out his deputy Russell is the badass.
I agree. I have an argument that yeah, I mean even before Russell's time comes, I had it in my note because I didn't remember this movie very well because I hadn't watched it since I was probably like 13 years old, 14 years old. I guess I was about 16 years old. Came out in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I hadn't watched it since I was like 16 years old. I didn't remember how he went out, but I'd had it in my notes before that he's kind of the hero of this movie.
He is. I agree.
He's definitely kind of the hero. But neither one of them are David from Vacancy.
So, to break it down real quick, a big military plane carrying something we don't know yet, but something definitely not good, crashed into this body of water. The stuff in the plane then leaked out into the water and ended up in the town's people's drinking water. Now it has begun to make people crazy and homicidal. So that's what's going on. David then asked the mayor, who 100% looks like a Scrooge McDuck mayor. He's old, he's fat, he's like the white dude he's got a big ass swimming pool in the middle of all these big empty fields. Because he's not growing anything on his land. Like, he's not a farmer. He's a politician.
Yeah. I feel like every small town has some old fat white guy who calls the shots.
Yep. Yeah, and he's like making rules for all these farmers, even though he's obviously not a farmer. He doesn't know fucking shit. He just knows how to talk people into voting for him. That's the vibe we get from him. But he tells the mayor what he has discovered, and they need to cut off the town water before anyone else gets sick. And of course, the mayor says, fuck that. It would cost everyone way too much money. But David, he says fuck that, and he cuts it off anyway. I don't really blame the mayor here, though. I feel like if somebody came and told me this, now so far, they've had two situations with people. And I mean, that's a lot when you only have like 1,200 people total. But cutting the whole entire town's water off, I mean, I don't know. I'd be like, man, you got to that quick.
Yeah, I agree. I would have also been like, no, we're not fucking cutting the water off. That's stupid. I would have looked into his theory a little bit more. I wouldn't have just been like, no, and then sat back in my stupid fucking sunbathing chair and put my glasses back on and been like, fuck off. But, I think David, I mean, I guess if he really believes in I don't think he should have cut the water off. I mean, obviously we know in reality he was right, but I don't think he has enough evidence to back his theory up to literally cut the people's water off. He could have fucked a lot of people up.
Well, if I was the mayor, I'd say, hey, let's go around and see if anybody else is feeling weird. If there's any other weird things going on with people. And if there was, which we find out there probably would have been at this point, okay, you might be right. Let's go ahead and shut the water off. But just based on the two people, I would be like, I don't know about this yet. But instead, this guy just fucking sits down to sunbathe, I guess, read his paper.
I mean,
does nothing.
Even in that scenario, I would have been like, okay, maybe there's a sickness going around. But is this town? Do they not purify their water? Do they get it? Do they not filter it and purify it?
Straight from the tap, man.
Yeah,
from the river.
Most places have a plant that takes care of shit like this.
They can't afford it.
Yeah, apparently they're like, we literally drink the river water.
They only got 2 cops. They can only afford 2 police officers. So back at the sheriff's station, Bill William is looking really bad. He has blood running from his nose. His skin had turned real pale color, and you can see his veins. He looks pretty gross. David asks Russell if he's sure he put in a transfer for him yesterday, and they start to wonder why no one has come to pick him up yet. They then check the phone to find out that the phones are out, and also discover that they have no internet and no cell service. They have been completely cut off from the rest of the world.
And David knows immediately, as soon as he doesn't have cell service, this is bad. We've been cut off completely.
I would be sketched out too, though. I mean, I'd be like, whoa, we have nothing. We have nothing all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would necessarily jump to the conclusion that the government has quarantined us, but
yeah, it would have been like our cell towers are probably down, which would more than likely run your internet and shit. That we probably just have an issue. But no, David has already figured out this entire movie in the very beginning, because David is actually not related to David from Vacancy. He's obviously like an offspring of Einstein.
I thought you were gonna say Frank McRae.
Ah, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, it's Frank. It's Frank's son. That's what it is.
What if Russell would have been like, oh, the internet and phones are connected to that damn water thing you turned off. Like, you turned everything off. So David then walks outside to discover Main Street pretty much empty, which we seen the day before, and it was very populated. He then spots an all-black SUV that looks very much out of place, and as he walks towards it, it speeds off. What's the point of fishtailing it out of there? Like, if you don't want to be super suspicious, you should probably drive away like normal.
It was actually like two 17-year-olds getting high, and they're like, "Oh fuck, the sheriff's coming, take off."
Well, David wasn't even that close to it. He was like 100 yards away, and this SUV just guns it and just takes off very dramatically. And I'm like, now you've given yourself up.
They look no like this guy knows. He knows what's going on.
He knows. David then runs into the funeral home / medical examiner's office. He walks into the back looking for the doctor. He starts to hear moaning and sees movement coming from one of the bodies on the gurney. He slowly walks over and pulls the sheet back to find the funeral home worker with his eyes and mouth stitched shut. David then cuts the mouth stitches so that the man can speak, and the man opens his mouth and says, "Behind you."
Which is amazing that he knew behind him because his eyes are sewn shut.
That was my fucking notes, man. Like,
How did
he know that?
Yeah, that made no sense.
Yeah.
I don't know how anybody, like all the people who worked on this movie and pre-screened it and all that, didn't catch, like, okay, maybe we should have him cut his eye. Like one of the eyes open or something first. Cut the stitches on the eye so he could see for that to make any type of fucking sense.
Yeah, he had a sheet over his face too.
I do love this scene. I think this is one of the scarier, creepier scenes of this entire movie. It's the whole morgue scene. If I'm in a morgue and I see what you would presume to be a dead body move like that, I'm getting the fuck out of there. I'm not
gonna check.
Not sticking around to check bodies in the morgue when they're moving around and shit. I mean, especially with everything that's going on. I mean, David already knows everything. So he probably could.
He knew he had to save that guy.
Yeah.
How
did he not know that the fucking morgue guy was in there, possessed?
As many times as I've seen this movie, this is the first time I've ever realized that guy was a preacher.
The guy with his eyes sewn shut?
Yeah, he's a preacher, which is kind of funny because he's like the preacher and he makes fuck tons of money selling like coffins and burying everybody in the town. Like he's got two good paying gigs.
I'm sure he sells life insurance too.
Yeah, apparently that's a big thing. So anyway, David turns around and gets blasted by the medical examiner. He then attempts to kill David with what I think is a bone saw. They struggle around for a bit when David is eventually able to get the cord wrapped around this guy. He then pulls it tight, causing the saw to kill the medical examiner. But once the saw fucks this dude up and he falls to the ground, the saw then heads straight for David's balls. I'm not making that up.
I didn't get why they put this in here. Like, he's got a rogue bone saw about to cut his fucking junk off. He's about to get, what is that? Johnson syndrome or something? About to get Lost Johnson syndrome.
Johnson syndrome.
Yeah. Maybe that's what happened to Steven's junk. Got cut off by a bone saw.
I mean, every saw I've ever used, like you have to continue squeezing the button how's the button being squeezed? It's like it's just like taped.
It's not.
It's like taped. It's like taped down.
That lazy fucking medical examiner has obviously rigged this saw up to be completely against regulation.
So it stops right before cutting his dick off. The camera pans up and we see that Russell has stepped on the cord, effectively saving David's manhood. Good job, Russell.
Yeah, this is
would have been the end of David.
First of many major saves by Russell. I gotta say, if I'm David and this saw's coming at my junk, I'm giving up some toes. Like I'm kicking this fucking thing away. No doubt.
Well, he just sits there with his legs spread, like he doesn't even try to fight it.
No, he doesn't. He's like, today's the day
for my transition.
Glad I impregnated my wife first.
Yeah. So later that night, we see David trying to convince Judy to leave town when she suddenly notices that someone is outside. David goes to check it out when he is suddenly ambushed by a group of soldiers wearing gas masks. They quickly detain David and Judy and place them on a school bus filled with the other townsfolk. David finds a seat by Russell, who informs him that he was on his way to Cedar Rapids when the military spiked his tires and detained him. We then get a bunch of shots of the high school that has now been turned into some kind of military operating base. We see helicopters, Humvees, tents, and temporary gates put up. And as they are herding these people off the bus, they are going through this health checkpoint thing. An interesting bit of information. We went through something very similar to this when we came back from our deployment during COVID.
Well,
Very
I was
similar.
going to mention this in my notes. This wasn't just an army thing. This was a thing in the civilian world too. They actually
really?
had the temperature guns that
Yep.
they would check your head before you went into places. And if you had a temperature, you couldn't go in.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember me telling you, but first they wouldn't let us off the plane. We sat on the plane for an hour or something. And then when we got off the plane, they were like, you have to immediately go to these buses. So we ran across this airfield, couldn't stop, talk to anybody, nothing. Got on these buses. Then we sat there for an hour and a half. And then when the buses left and we got to these airplane hangars that had been quarantined off, there was all these health people there. And it took forever to get off the bus because they were doing this very same thing. It wasn't this dramatic, but it was very similar to this. So yeah, it was kind of crazy. But as they are moving through these checkpoints, for some reason, two soldiers take Russell away. We then see two people in hazmat suits taking people's temperatures. David gets cleared, but Judy does not. David tries to explain that her temperature is a little high because she is pregnant, but they don't give a fuck and they take Judy into a different line. David tries to fight them, but he ends up getting knocked out by one of the soldiers' rifles, and Judy gets strapped to a gurney and put to sleep with some kind of gas. So David wakes up in what I think is a cattle truck. I think that's what that is. It's some kind of truck that hauls animals. I assume it's cows.
It's what they use for school buses in these towns. They can't afford actual buses. The mayor spent the bus money on his pool.
It's full of other townspeople as well. The truck then arrives at a commandeered truck stop called the Quick Fills. The military tells everyone that they are trying to get them out of here and they just need to get in line and get checked in. Back over at the high school base, we hear an alarm go off and a truck full of residents with guns ran through the gates. Civilians and military then begin having a firefight as everything erupts into chaos. Then we see over at the Quick Fills, David has run into the water guy and tells him that he is going back for Judy. He then does this weird, Batman disappearing act.
Yeah, I was going to ask why they put that in there.
I don't know. This was such a bad
apparently
idea.
David's magic. I thought it did not fit with the movie at all.
No. So 1 second he's talking to the water guy, and then a truck drives past, and then he's just gone. And the water guy looks like, what the fuck just happened to David?
Yeah, I did not. It just didn't fit. It just didn't fit the movie.
Yeah, I don't care how badass he is. You can't do that. I mean, unless you jumped and grabbed onto the truck, but then, everyone would see you do that.
He's not even that badass. He does one really badass thing in this movie. But other than that, he's not. I mean, he's Chris Angel. Mind freak.
He just mind freaked out of there.
Just mind fucked you.
The water guy's
maybe it's David Angel.
The water guy looks and you just hear David yell, mind freak, as he gets further away. We then see David.
Do you get why, with the reasoning why these town people drove through the fence and started shooting?
Yeah, because they're the government's herding them into this place. And they're like, fuck that. I'm sure that was their family members and stuff in this big fenced in area. And they're like, we're getting them out.
Well, I thought that too. Because really, I'd forgotten about this movie. So as this goes on, I'm like, damn, the government kind of had all this under control. And that what they did really fucked everything up. And I don't think that those were people. I think they were possessed. Or I think they were
Oh, yeah.
infected people.
Yeah,
I didn't
that's
catch that
possible.
until the end.
Yeah, that's actually possible. I do know from the original movie that the government originally was trying to like fix the situation. They didn't go in with the mindset of we're going to quarantine everybody off and then kill them and then lie about what happened. They did originally try to help. And I think that may have been the case here because really what would be the point of separating sick people and not sick people and then killing them in two separate places? I
Well,
mean,
I have an answer for that. I'm not sure which direction it was going, but they would, I think, if they were originally going to kill everybody, that they separated the sick people to do tests on them to see what this chemical was doing to people. Because she mentions that they took her blood and they did some tests on her blood, but she's like, I don't know how many other times they did, but I remember specifically them taking my blood and doing tests on it. It totally makes sense for the government to be like, all right, let's separate the ones we know that's sick and use this to gain some information and do some tests to see what this chemical warfare shit that we accidentally crashed into this town. Let's see what it would actually do to people at least.
well,
But if in fact that the government was trying to do things right, they really had everything under control. Like everything was going pretty good. They would have bust everybody out. The sick people would have died. The non-sick people that had temperatures would have lived. They would have quarantined them, and then everything would have been all right.
yeah, I mean, that's definitely a possibility. The only thing I would say is they should have, I'm pretty sure they already knew the effects because remember later on we find out that the government developed this to do exactly this. They knew what it did and then I guess they decided not to use it because it was actually going to be destroyed and just didn't make it.
It would honestly make a country worse. If we were at war with the country and we infected them with a bunch of shit that made everybody in the country ruthless killers, that would seem like it would be a bad idea. But yeah, I definitely thought, and I didn't really click until the end, because I thought, why are these like rednecks running through the gate and shooting it out? Like, I get they're herding people up and people don't know what's going on, but to literally drive through a fence and pretty much commit suicide by shooting it out with shit tons of fucking soldiers and
Yeah,
people in the military, like, you're gonna die, and they jump out and just start shooting people.
it's not a great idea.
Yeah, I don't think it was actual people. Now, I think it was actually infected that
Yeah, that's a good
were
point.
going to wreak havoc.
We then see David head to the sheriff's station looking for weapons when he runs into Russell. Russell then tells him about the military evacuating the school base after the shootout, and they decide to go there to find Judy. We then see Judy still strapped to the gurney. She is inside a big tent full of other people who are starting to lose their minds. She then notices her young employee Becca is also strapped to the gurney. Now, I'd never thought about this until this watch that I did. It never really says why Becca is in there, but I wonder if Becca is also pregnant because she dates the Scotty dude.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Why else would she be in there?
Yeah, I mean, other than her just having a temperature, one thing that we learn later on in the movie, when they're in the car and right before she has her last scene, she's like coughing and shit, like she's sick. And Russell's like, I don't think we should be in the car with her. She's sick. Like she seems like she's not doing good. So I don't know if that could play into her being pregnant, or maybe she just had like a common cold that she was picking up and that's why she had a temperature.
Yeah, I mean, it could be the cold. I don't think that she was ever infected because we don't see any of the other infected coughing. They just
No,
become
no,
violent.
I agree. I don't think she was infected at all. But that's something that's a good theory that I never picked up on. I never even questioned why she was in there because they never showed it.
Scotty may have been, beating them cheeks.
He-
I'm sure he was. Because
Yeah.
they were technically adults at this point. They're both out of high school.
No, she's under 18. They say at one point in the movie that she's not even 18 yet.
Oh, I thought, she'd be out of high school considering she has a job.
No, I think she's like 17. Well, in these towns, you go to work at 14 or you die.
We then hear the sound of metal dragging across the floor, and we see it as the school's principal walk into the tent dragging a pitchfork behind him. He then begins, one by one, stabbing the people who are strapped to the gurneys. This is something I also never picked up on, is the principal, when he goes crazy, where does he go to kill people but the fucking school? He's like, them damn kids, like I've wanted to kill them for so long.
Yeah.
Here's my chance.
Yeah. I don't blame him. I'm sure being a principal in high school probably sucks.
Oh, yeah. He walks over to Judy, and as he raises the pitchfork to stab her, we see he is shot from behind, and David and Russell then come rushing into the room to rescue Judy and Becca. We then see the group walking down the town's main road, which now looks like it has been hit with a fucking bomb. They attempt to find a drivable car, but the ones that aren't on fire have boots on them. Russell then finds a working pickup truck, but David notices that the bed is full of bodies and orders everyone to hide. I wouldn't have picked up on that. I'd have just, get in the truck, let's roll. I would not have caught the little bit of blood running out the tailgate. Would not have looked at that.
Yeah, I mean, if they could have got the truck going pretty quick,
They still could have left.
They could have got out of there.
Yeah, I still would have, even if I would have, I still would have took the truck.
Yeah.
Fuck them dudes.
David knows everything, except when somebody's behind him.
We then see the hunters from earlier have now went crazy and are hunting people. They shoot a man trying to escape in the middle of the street and then place him in the back of the truck before driving off. Now out of options for a vehicle, David says that he has the old police cruiser still in his barn. They decide to head to his place on foot, cutting through Becca's boyfriend's farm.
I was very confused at this. I was like, why is there rednecks out there murdering people? Because you don't know at this point, with your first time watching it. And like I said, I've been so long since I watched this, I didn't remember the fine details. But they don't seem infected.
Yeah, it seems like they're just morbid people that have taken advantage of the situation.
Yeah, and I thought that was really weird. And then you learn later on that they more than likely were infected.
They eventually make it to Scotty's farm where he and Becca reunite after finding him in the barn looking for supplies. David then tells everyone to hide in the back of the barn as a group of soldiers show up. We then see the soldiers drag Scotty's mom out into the yard, causing Scotty to run out to save her. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier, where I liked how the lead characters in the original movie were like these former special forces guys, because this stuff makes a lot more sense. Because there is nothing that happens that causes David to be like, oh shit, there's soldiers here. Like, they're sneaking up on us. I don't know if he just hears them and we don't hear it or something, but he immediately makes everyone hide, and then they immediately come around the corner of this barn. And, yeah. I mean, it just made more sense to the story when you find out that these guys are badass because they used to be trained at being badass, but this is just like two cops.
Yeah. Yeah, that would make a lot more sense. There, in the beginning of the movie, the first time when the soldiers take them, it's really weird. His wife does the same thing. They're having a conversation in the bedroom, and she's like, there's somebody outside.
Yeah.
Just randomly. It's like no noise or anything. She's just like, somebody's here. Maybe they have The Shining or something.
So Scotty runs out to save his mom, where ultimately the soldiers shoot Scotty and his mother, then burning the bodies. The soldiers then spread out and begin to search the rest of the farm. One enters the barn where the group is hiding. David and Russell ambush him, taking his gun and demanding answers as to what is going on. The soldier explains that they weren't really told anything about the situation except that there had been an accident, and that they weren't even aware of what state they had flown into until they seen the license plates.
That's accurate.
Yeah,
Anybody who's ever
yeah.
been in the army knows that that's pretty accurate.
You get
He would
very
have
little
no
info.
idea what's going on. Asking him would be just about as useful as asking one of the people you were with.
But one important amount of information they did tell him was to make sure that he kept his gas mask on, meaning the virus may have went airborne. He says that if they let him go, he would not tell the rest of the soldiers about the group hiding in the barn. They agree, they give him back his gun and mask, and he leaves without telling the other soldier that they are there. That morning, the group finally arrives at David and Judy's, while Russell and I said his name weird. While Russell,
Russell.
while,
Goddamn Russell.
while Russell and Becca get the old cop car ready, we see Judy pack a bag and then stop by for one last look at their nursery. As she walks into the room to look at the crib, we see Rory's now infected wife standing in the corner. Downstairs, David hears noise coming from the nursery and heads up to check on his wife. When he walks in, he sees Judy tied to a chair, and as he reaches for his gun, we see Rory's 32-year-old teenage son attack him from behind. He begins strangling David from behind, and just as David reaches for his gun on the floor, Rory's wife stabs a knife through his hand and into the wood floor. She then picks up the gun and walks over to Judy, and as she aims it, David attempts to piss her off, really is what he's attempting to do. So she will basically aim the gun at him, and this works because just as she turns towards him, he bucks the son off, and he pulls his hand free with the knife still in it, and he stabs Rory's wife in the neck with the knife. Kind of badass.
Yeah, this is how I know The Walking Dead came out before this, because clearly David watches The Walking Dead, because that was some straight Rick Grimes shit that he pulls. Like, he literally, like, smacks her in the neck with a knife that stabbed through his hand, cutting her throat.
Yeah, but I feel like that's Rick Grimes, like, season 3 to 5 or something, though. I don't remember him being that badass in season 1.
Yeah, well, maybe David, because he knows everything. He knows where The Walking Dead
knows what Rick Grimes is going to be.
He read the comics.
Oh, yes.
The Carl, did you see that?
That's pretty good. So, as soon as she falls to the ground, we see the son now holding the gun pointed at David when suddenly Russell... Stop saying Russell. When suddenly Russell shoots him from behind the window. It's like every episode I have a problem with some fucking... like a name problem. It's always a name problem.
Russell is... it's a weird one to have a problem with. Old Rochelle. But he's cutting his junk off too.
So unfortunately, we are starting to see Russell act a little overly aggressive. And at this point, Judy tries to tell David that Russell's infected, but he is in denial. The group then all loads up into the cop car and drives towards the quick fills. And while driving down the road, a fucking Apache attack helicopter flies over them, causing the group to panic. I would panic too.
Yeah, I want to go back to the scene before when he stabs her through the throat. he has to pull her blood from her throat through his hand, clearly infecting himself. Like, if this virus is that contagious, he clearly just infected himself. He put her blood and pulled it through his entire fucking hand into his body. How did they not address this?
I don't know. If I were him, I would have pulled the knife and my hand out at the same time, cleaned off the knife with her blood on it, disinfected it, and then pulled it out of my fucking hand.
I would have. I thought the same thing. Pull it out, and then I would have found something to break the knife off with or something before I pulled that shit through my fucking hand. But I would be so convinced that I just infected myself, I would have probably cut my hand off. Like, I would have probably had my wife, or probably Russell.
If he would have cut his hand off, though, it would have been 2 Rick Grimes, because Rick Grimes cuts his hand off.
I mean, but in reality, if this is real life with The Walking Dead, not in the situation, and you think that you just infected yourself. I mean, I'm tying a tourniquet off and trying to stop that blood from getting to the rest of my body. Yeah, they they never addressed this again. And it seemed really intentional the way that he has to, cuz he almost hesitates as he's pulling it through his hand like he knows. And I wondered if there was supposed to be a different, or originally a different ending for this movie. But we'll get to that later.
So, back to the Apache helicopter flying over them. The Apache kind of flies over them, and then they see it like turn around because they're like, "Oh, I don't know if it's seen us." And yeah, definitely seen you. Especially considering you're the only fucking car in the middle of what essentially is a bunch of fields. It then turns around and heads straight for them, prompting David to drive the car into a car wash. The car wash then gets turned on, causing the car to be pulled by the automated tracks. We then see a bunch of crazed car wash workers begin to attack the car. It's like a bunch of crazies that just won't leave work.
Yeah.
This car wash in the middle of nowhere.
I mean, is there that many workers that even work at a car wash that washes your car for you?
Must have been.
Most of those that like have, like, I don't know, if it's a nice one person working there. Most of them are just drive-throughs.
It's also weird because it's like in the middle of nothing.
I don't know. Maybe it was people that were in line to get their car washed and they sipped water that they got before they left their house. Maybe the water that was spraying on the cars at the car wash, which was the town's water, misted through and infected a bunch of people in line. That's my
Maybe.
theory. That's my way overthought theory for this movie.
They start busting out all of the windows and trying to pull people out of the car. David and Judy manage to fight them off. David then gets the car started and pushes down the gas. And just as they are exiting the car wash, one of the crazies, who is on top of the car, slips a hose around Becca's neck, pulling her out of the back window and killing her. The group then jump out of the car to help Becca, but it is too late.
This was awesome.
Yeah, this is a great kill.
Yeah, her getting pulled out of the back of the car by her neck, essentially breaking her neck because they pull her down. She didn't have time to suffocate.
No, it snaps
So
her
it
neck,
just
yeah.
snaps her neck. And I am so glad that she died. Yes.
Why?
Because I'll talk about it more later, but this movie is very, very, very predictable with their characters and what's going to happen.
Yeah.
They get in a lot of scenarios where they get lucky, and it's almost like you're more surprised. You would be more surprised if they didn't get lucky. They have a thing with this movie where the main characters have like a force field around them. And I hate when
They have plot armor.
Yeah, I hate when movies do that. You know, I love when a movie kills like a main character because then you're like, nobody's safe. And this was the only time we really get that.
So a few moments later, the cop car explodes from a shot fired from the attack helicopter. So turns out they would have all died if it wasn't for her getting the hose wrapped around her neck.
Her and her potential baby. It may have been a
this is
double
true.
kill.
Double kill. Yeah, they would have all died pretty much immediately. That would have been the end of this movie.
It would have wrapped things up a lot quicker.
A lot quicker. The group is now on foot, still heading down the road towards the quick fill when suddenly Russell... I said it right. When suddenly Russell spots a black SUV coming their way. Russell then tosses out a spike strip from the roadblock, causing the SUV to wreck in the field. As the group runs up to the wreckage, we see a government agent begin to climb out. Russell immediately tries to shoot him before David grabs his gun and says they should talk to him first. At this point, it is very obvious that our boy Russell is infected.
Yeah. I had when he freaked out in the car wash, that's when I put in my notes, I think he might be infected. Yeah, when he throws the spike strips out and wrecks the car that they're trying to commandeer.
Yeah.
Then it was like, okay, he's probably infected. And then at this point, it's like, yeah, he's gone.
The agent explains that there was a biological weapon named Trixie on its way to be destroyed in Texas. That's what was aboard the plane that crashed. The weapon was designed to destabilize a town or city without ever putting any military assets in the area. The agent also says that after 48 hours, if you're not sick or dead, then you will be fine. David responds with the fact that it's been 3 days and they aren't sick, so he can help them get out of the town. And before he gets a chance to answer, Russell shoots him in the fucking head. Totally ruining their possibility of ever getting out of there.
Yeah, they had a fucking
Alive.
they had a golden ticket.
Yep.
That was their goose egg, and he broke it.
Yep. Twice. He wrecked
Yeah.
the car and shot the guy. So David and Judy are pissed. Russell thinks it's no big deal. He sits his rifle down and begins to search the agent's truck. When he comes out, he finds that David has taken his gun. Russell then pulls his pistol on David and takes the gun back. He threatens to shoot Judy and pretty much holds them at gunpoint as they walk down the road. After a while, David decides to turn around and confront Russell. And after some convincing, he finally gets Russell to lower his pistol, and then he sucker punches him to the ground and grabs the gun. And this is when Russell realizes that he is infected. It's pretty sad. He asks David if he can still walk with them, basically until he completely loses his mind, and they agree. That would have been fucked up if they wouldn't have. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of hard to say, but because you never know when he's going to turn around and, I don't know, try to attack you, but then again, leaving him because he's not completely crazy yet.
Yeah, this is when I put in there that he was the hero of the movie. Not only did he save David 3 times, but he also was able to fight off the infection enough to spare their lives originally and then not to shoot David there at the end. I don't really get how that works with the rest of the plot because it seems like when people go crazy, they go crazy. But obviously, he's able to fight it off. One thing they never address in this movie, though, is that so you turn in the first 48 hours, and it's been 3 days. So at some point in their first day of travels, Russell gets infected.
Yeah.
And they never address. And thinking back, I could never come up with the time when he got infected.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I think it's just, I don't know, maybe the fucking military dude was wrong. I don't know. I mean, there's the possibility that it went airborne because they tell the military guys to keep their gas masks on. We don't really know. We don't have a clear answer.
Yeah, I don't think it's airborne.
I don't either.
I don't think it's because then everybody would have gotten it.
Nothing goes airborne that fast. I mean, that would be extremely fast.
Yeah, I think the scene with the guys, the military guys with the gas mask, for one, I think was just a aesthetic thing. They look much scarier running around with gas masks. It's better for the movie. But I think when he takes his mask off, that soldier that they capture, and he asks if he's going to die now, I think that was more alluding to showing you how much they don't know. Like, he doesn't even know. He thinks that he's going to now die because he's had his mask off for, I don't know, probably 30 seconds at that point. So, yeah, I don't think it's airborne. I think at some point, I don't think that the guy's wrong either. Like, as you were saying earlier, they've studied this. They've obviously developed this weapon and they've studied it. They probably know pretty well by 48 hours you're normally turned. I just thought it was something interesting. I don't know if it's something that maybe you caught and I didn't, or maybe it's something going back and watching the movie later that it's something that they may have slipped in there somewhere.
No, there's, I mean, I've seen this movie many times and I can't think of a single situation where he would have gotten infected that we could have seen. Now, obviously, we don't follow everything they do in this time. So maybe there's just something we just didn't see. I don't know. So later that night, the group makes it to a military roadblock. They scope it out from the tall brush, and then Russell tells David that they can make it to the highway on the other side if they cut through the side of the roadblock, and that he will distract the soldiers. After a brief protest, David agrees and hands Russell the gun. We then see Russell run out to the middle of the road and begin to yell at the soldiers. They then start yelling orders for him to get down as they slowly walk towards him, guns drawn. Russell then suddenly pulls the gun from behind his back and the soldiers begin firing. As Russell lays in the middle of the road dying, the soldiers gather around him. He looks up at them and says, "Fuck you for what you did." As David and Judy run down the highway unnoticed, we hear the final gunshot that kills Russell.
In real life, these are probably National Guard guys. From the way he explained it, it sounded like National Guard guy. These dudes are like, what the fuck is he talking about? What did we do? You know, they didn't tell him that the government crashed a plane and there's this bioweapon, secret bio. They don't know any of that shit.
Nope.
They would never know any of that.
I mean, even just regular military. I mean, I never had any idea of what the fucking government was developing.
Yeah,
Not a security clearance.
He's like, fuck you for what you've done. And they're probably like, well, what did he expect? We had to shoot him. Like, how is he that? He had to know we were going to shoot him. He pulled a gun on us. We didn't want to shoot you.
Yeah, I would say pour one out for our boy Deputy Russell, though, who spent the whole fucking movie saving David and Judy's ass over and over again.
Yeah.
It's a really shitty part, though, of the movie.
I 100%, though, after they had the talk and he's like, can I follow you? I knew right then, very predictable, that he was going to die for them somehow. I was like, why else are they going to keep him around? He's going to sacrifice himself for them. It's just that very predictable character trait.
The same exact thing happens in the original. I believe in the original, though, they're chasing them through the woods and his buddy like hides behind a tree and has a shootout with the soldiers while they get away. But yeah, this thing follows the original plot. So I don't really knock them on that. So David and Judy finally make it to the quick fill, which I want to remind you, they set out for right after they rescue Judy from the high school, which was quite some time later. And of course, the place is deserted. No civilians or military in sight. David heads inside while Judy looks around the parking lot. And what does she find behind door number 1? The ashes of all the people the military brought there and said they were going to get out safely. Nope. Instead, they just shot everyone and burned the bodies. So the water guy, who is totally fine with leaving his wife behind at the high school base, is now a pile of dust. It's kind of ironic that the water guy got killed by fire. I mean, just like kind of. I mean, I know a bullet probably killed him, but in my mind, the bullet just wounded him and then the fire killed him.
And maybe his wife came back and set him on fire for leaving her. And everybody else was just a casualty.
Bro, it took them a whole entire 24 hours to get to this. I don't even know why they had their mind set on getting there, because it took them so long. Like, I would have figured no one's there at the quick fill anymore. If they are, it's probably not, they're not going to just let us just stroll right on in. You know, they've already gotten the people who were cleared. If I was David, I would assume they already got that group of people out of there. I mean, that was a whole entire day ago. They're gone. But they, make it a mission to get to this place.
Well, I don't know what they thought was going to happen anyway. So you think they thought that the military was going to be there and they were going to get let out?
I think that
because they took his wife originally because she had a temperature. They would have just did the same thing again.
Well, I think that David had this idea because there's just letting people, there's so many people out in that parking lot. We can just slip right on in and no one will notice. And it's well, okay, here's problem number 1. It's been so long ago now. Problem number 2, your wife packed a fucking bag. So she'd be the only person there that packed stuff.
Yeah.
Which would look really weird. No one else has a single possession. Your wife's got a suitcase. Kind of looks like maybe you just showed up. Just saying.
Yeah.
But I guess this is the only plan they have. I don't know.
Yeah.
They can't walk to the next town. There's no way they can do that. So I guess the quick fill, maybe there's a car or something. I don't know.
There's a truck.
There is. So, meanwhile, David has better luck behind door number 2 because he finds a semi truck parked in the quick fill's garage. And after some discussion, they decide to take the semi to Cedar Rapids because that's really the only plan that you have. So while David is gathering some supplies from the gas station, Judy stays put in the diner, and while she is getting a bottle of water, we see one of the crazy people hunters watching her from behind.
Man, Judy needs to start checking her surroundings.
Why would they split up?
The second time in this movie that Judy has gotten caught up with somebody behind her.
Yeah?
And
Well, I
yes,
don't.
and why would they split
Yeah,
up?
don't split up.
That's dumb. But I do love this scene. This is another one of my favorite scenes from the movie. Is the infected silently behind her, standing in the background.
It's very The Strangers.
Yeah, and then but they move the camera slightly, and then slightly move it back when she sits down, and it's gone.
Yeah. So while in the garage, David starts to hear a military radio talk about starting the countdown. He begins to look for where the radio is coming from when he discovers the people hunter's pickup truck. Then suddenly all the lights shut down at the quick fill. 2 of the hunters chase Judy into the kitchen where she hides in a meat cooler full of bodies. David finds her and they both run to the truck. David attempts to get the keys when he suddenly gets pulled underneath by one of the hunters while the other one goes after Judy. David finds himself underneath the semi in this like oil changing pit, I guess maybe what it would be called. It's basically like a rectangle slot that's like in the ground underneath the truck where the mechanic would stand when he was changing the truck's oil. So he is now down there like fighting one of the hunters, and I assume this guy's like the leader because he is pretty big and
The leaders are always pretty big.
he's really big, and he's like the scariest looking one. So
Yeah.
I'm designating him as the leader.
Did you catch whenever they were in that pile of bodies? For one, that I like that scene because we got some of the most practical effects we get in the whole movie. Most of the effects in this movie is just gunshots, but we get all these awesome like dead bodies they did. But did you catch that one body that he literally had his entire like jaw
Yeah.
ripped off his fucking head?
Oh yeah, it looks awesome.
It did. It looked awesome. And this big guy that's the leader, he 100% was the one that ripped the jaw off. Calling it now.
That's a total leader move.
That is.
Yeah.
If you're an infected zombie, like infected leader, you would rip somebody's jaw off. That's obvious.
He's an alpha infected for sure.
They should have a second movie that just follows him,
Just him.
ripping people's jaws off.
So him and David are like fighting in there, and David full swing clocks him in the face with a big ass wrench, and it doesn't faze him because he's a leader. We get like the really cool shots of him, and I feel like they probably made him look the coolest, and especially for this scene. On the DVD, there is a whole entire special features where they do his makeup for the scene. And it's really cool because you get to see the detail that they put into it.
Bro, did you catch on the special features that this was back when DVDs were still relatively, I won't say new, but they were still inside of like 10 years. It's when they still tried.
Yeah.
I'll say that. Did you see all the shit that they packed in there to put on the DVD?
Yes, there's a ton of stuff.
They put so much, they put like storyboards, and it was a different time. Now, if you buy a DVD, they don't give you shit.
I just want to point out, you sounded very much like just like a film nerd where you're like, did you see the special features?
No, I didn't mean I didn't mean the content of it. I just meant all the shit they put on there. Like now when you buy a DVD, since Blu-ray came out, you don't get shit on a DVD. They don't give you nothing.
I mean,
even Blu-ray special features is only maybe like the deleted scenes, the previews, which nobody ever gives. Why? Who goes to the special features to watch the previews? of other movies.
Yeah,
Nobody.
I don't even do that. Like,
There's
I watch pretty much all the shit on a movie I really like. I watch everything, but I'm not watching that.
Yeah, and
No
it's
use
like
for
you
that.
could be watching a horror movie and it'll be like previews for like a rom-com in there. Like nobody watches that.
I seen somebody talk about May the other day. Remember,
No,
I was
forgot
like,
about that.
remember I accidentally clicked the trailers on the House of a Thousand Corpses and it played a movie called May, and I was like, what the
Didn't you
fuck is
play it on the
this?
show?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. We were supposed to watch that.
Yeah, I still want to watch it.
Isn't she like a cannibal or something?
No,
She
she
like kills
kills
people?
people to build the perfect
Oh
boyfriend.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Like a Franken boyfriend. So while all that is going on, the other hunter climbs up into the cab of the semi in order to find and kill Judy. And as he opens the door, at first he doesn't see anyone, and it looks like she kind of escaped out of the other side. And as he climbs in to follow her, he hears a gun cock to his left, and he turns to see Judy hiding in the sleeper cab of the truck. She pulls the trigger on the gun, and we then see Crazy Hunter Guy's brains splatter on the windshield. Meanwhile, under the truck, David is still getting his ass kicked, but he does manage to spill oil all over the extra large hunter guy. He then pulls out his stolen quick fill metal lighter and sets his big ass on fire. David and Judy then get into the semi and burst through the garage door and out onto the highway. And as they are hauling ass down the road, they hear a 30-second countdown begin on their military radio. Judy holds on to David as the countdown nears its end and also stares out of the rear window of the truck when finally the person over the radio says 0. Everything goes silent for a moment and Judy sees nothing but the night sky. We then get a scenic shot of the truck passing by as we are then left looking at the darkness of the night. When suddenly we see a very bright flash and then the shape of a mushroom cloud in the distance. As Judy looks back, the night now looks like day as she sets her eyes on the nuclear explosion. Through the side mirror of the truck, we now see a shockwave of dirt and debris moving at an incredible pace, quickly catching up to the truck. We then see the semi lifted up off the road and begin to be tossed around with the force of the blast. It finally comes crashing down and rolls onto its top. We then see David and Judy climb out of the wreckage. Don't think they would have lived through that because neither one of them had seatbelt on.
Oh no, a shockwave big enough to lift the semi off the ground where they're at. I mean, it would have killed them
It
instantly.
would have exploded their fucking organs and
yes,
shit. Yeah.
It would have absolutely destroyed their organs, collapsed their lungs, literally smashed their fucking heart. Like all their organs would have been fucking from blunt force trauma. I'm pretty sure their like veins would have collapsed under that much pressure. Yeah, they would not have lived through this. And under the slight chance that they got lucky, because they get lucky 700 times in this movie, especially here at the end where they escape with 30 seconds left before the town blows up. But I can definitely say without a shadow of a doubt, if they did live through this shockwave, that Judy would not still be pregnant with the baby.
Man, we've felt shockwaves from explosions, like shooting
Yes.
artillery. And what is crazy is you can feel that shit in your fucking teeth, like to the core of your bones. And like a shockwave that size would burst your blood vessels. Like your blood would just splatter inside of your body.
Yeah, your capillaries would not be able to handle that pressure.
Russell was there protecting them from heaven. He saved them again.
Yeah, that's number 4. But yeah, they would be instantly dead. I have no doubt. But even if they didn't die instantly, they would have massive internal bleeding and they would die shortly after that. A shockwave of this size would have probably shattered their teeth out of their skull. Like it was enough to pick up a semi like 7-8 foot in the air. Yeah, there's no way. And there's no way that she would still be pregnant. Like that, the government just committed an abortion.
They make their way back up to the road and look back in the direction where their town used to be, only to now be replaced by a very large nuclear fireball in the sky. We then see them walking through a cornfield with the city of Cedar Rapids not too far in the distance. These two motherfuckers are determined as hell to get to Cedar Rapids. But then we see another one of these spy plane images from above that spots them, and as it zooms out, it puts a little box around the city and says Cedar Rapids, population 128,000, initiate containment protocol. During the credits, we then see a news report that claims that the fire that destroyed Ogden Marsh was from a chemical plant exploding, causing a 400-foot tall fireball, and also a nearby truck refueling station exploded, and the area has now been quarantined off to any civilians. I feel like it was taller than 400 feet. Seemed like it was a lot bigger than 400 feet to me.
Yeah. Yeah. This is propaganda, obviously.
Yeah.
The government's like, we'll never be able to convince people that a chemical plant explosion was the size of a nuke, so we'll add in there a refueling station. That'll make it
A little
more
bit of gas made it bigger. Yeah, so basically, it looks like now that they've made it to Cedar Rapids, now Cedar Rapids is about to go through a very similar thing.
They are, because David is infected, and they never fucking addressed it at the end of this movie, which makes it awful.
I mean, honestly, them spotting them two getting away is probably why they did the containment protocol, because they probably assume he probably is infected.
He is. He pulled the knife through his hand, and I will say I thought the ending was awful, because I thought that them pulling the knife through his hand set up for the perfect, like, shock, grim ending, which is after all this, because by the end of this, you forget about the knife being pulled through his hand. It's never addressed again. And they survive all this, and at the end, David is turned. Like, he tells her, like, I'm infected, or, however they end it, David has to die, and she has to go on without him. That would have been a great, super grim ending, and I feel like that's what they were setting up for, and for whatever reason, it was either rewritten or it didn't screen well. I don't know, but yeah, they missed a really good opportunity.
I really like the ending up until the nuclear explosion truck thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like that at all, but whatever.
Yeah,
I liked the movie up until the last 3 minutes of it, probably.
nuclear explosion of CGI. What I really don't understand about the whole nuke thing, why didn't they just nuke the town from the start? If they were going to kill everybody
Well, I think they were
anyway.
trying to not do that, but that's kind of it. Just got out of hand.
Well, it just still seems like nuking an entire tiny town was a little much.
If I remember correctly, in the original, the first two military commanders that showed up on scene were actually trying to save people, save the town, and then kind of at the end, because they weren't being very successful, they send this high up, 5-star general or something there, and he kind of takes over and decides to nuke the town, pull the military out and nuke the town. And I think some of the other commanders were trying to stop it, but they obviously they can't. They're outranked.
We can't waste a nuke on that. You know how much money those cost? I'll have to not get as big of a bonus this year.
So, interesting thing, the news broadcast at the very end. So, the broadcaster's name is Bruce Anyun, and he is a real-life newscaster for KCRG Channel 9, which is the local news station for the actual Cedar Rapids, Iowa. That was cool. So, the actual news station and, news people did this for the end of the movie.
That was a cool Easter egg for people who lived in Iowa in 2010.
Yeah. Or 2009, 2008.
Yeah, that too.
I'm sure that he was around then.
If he still worked there then. That was back when people actually watched the news. That was before streaming had taken over. Now I feel like the only people who watch the news are people who only have like their satellite antenna hooked up and they're like 65. They watch like, what is it? Wheel of Fortune.
So an interesting thing about that, we did a like locally famous person at my job.
You did them? Was it good?
We did this locally famous person at my job. We remodeled their two of their houses. They're very wealthy. And I remember, when we did their first house, it was like, hey, so and so's we're this is so and so's house that we're doing. And I said, who the fuck is that? And like three people there, they were all older than me, were like, you don't know who so and so is? And I said, nope, never heard of them. And they were like, you see the commercials all over TV. And I said, I don't fucking watch TV. Like, who watches regular TV? Like, I haven't, besides like YouTube, I haven't seen commercials in years. And they were dumbfounded by this. Like, you don't watch regular TV? And I said, no, why would I watch regular TV? Like, what the fuck is on there that would make me want to sit through commercials every fucking 8 minutes? Yeah, so apparently the older generation watches television and our generation watches streaming.
Yes. Yes, like I said, I don't think there's anybody under the age of 55 that watches the local news.
Yeah, I have noticed though, this person has fucking billboards everywhere. I don't ever look at billboards until they were like, yeah, they got billboards all over the place, and now I see their billboard all over the place.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about it, and I didn't know who the fuck it was.
Yeah, apparently it was big news, and now like I YouTubed, and they're on YouTube a bunch, and yeah.
I know you pointed out the billboards now.
Well,
definitely know that they are.
She's attractive.
Yeah,
that's why I point them out.
Bet you wish they did. You guys did do her at work.
So the song in the opening of the film is Johnny Cash's "We'll Meet Again," which is from the same album as The Man Comes Around. So we have two like zombie-ish movies with Johnny Cash songs in the opening, and they're from the same exact album.
It's a good zombie / infected album to start with.
Yeah. So the old police car that they attempt to escape in is a 1973 Ford LTD, which was the same year the original film was released. And Lynn Lowry from the original cast of the 1973 film makes a cameo in this one. She plays the crazy lady riding the bike through the main street when it is pretty much empty.
Didn't catch that.
Yeah, you remember right before the SUV drives off?
Yeah. No.
Okay.
No, I seen it, obviously, but it didn't register in my brain, like, there was a lady on a bike.
All right, so ratings and kill count. The total kills in this movie is 20, not including the whole town. I didn't include them. I didn't write them all down. There's a lot, and they're almost all, like, infected kills, so.
Yeah, I would imagine.
There's a lot, yeah.
The kill count's probably pretty difficult.
It's a whole entire town.
Yeah.
So my favorite kill was Peggy Hamill, which is Rory's wife, which was knifed in the neck because it was cool. And my close second was Becca because I was not expecting that shit.
Yeah, my favorite kill is definitely Becca.
Okay.
Her getting pulled out of the back of the car, neck broke. I thought that was great. Close second, I'm going to say Judy's baby when that nuke went off. For sure, there's definitely blood running down her leg.
All right, so
that was that was awful.
It's time to do rating.
Do you think they put the baby in the kill count?
No, it wasn't in there. I read the kill count. It was quite long, but no, there was no baby in there. No zombie baby like Dawn of the Dead.
It's an infected baby.
Infected.
So it's a little different. It cries like a regular baby. It has to have a bottle. It shits and pisses. That's all it does. The only difference is when it gets old enough, it just tries to kill people.
So I gave the movie a 3.4 as a film, but I gave it a 4 out of enjoyment because I like it. even though it's got some fucking problems. But I like it, man. I enjoy it. I have fun watching it. I like the characters. I like especially the main two characters, the sheriff and the deputy. I kind of dig that, but it's got some issues, but I still like it.
Yeah, like the main two characters, Rick and Shane.
Rick and Shane, yeah, they're pretty much Rick and Shane. Ex-
Yeah.
Except for actually like Russell more than I like Shane.
Well, of course, Shane's a fucking piece of shit. He like fucked his fucking partner's wife and impregnated her.
I mean, oh my God, that is the same exact storyline. Like, think about it. The small town cop, his wife's pregnant, and his partner's with him through like the apocalypse. I mean, this is a very similar story.
Do you think Russell got Judy pregnant
That's
before
what
the
I'm
movie
wondering.
before the movie started?
That's what I'm wondering. He said, I was
Is
like,
that why he starts getting reckless like Shane? Shane
my
starts
God.
getting fucking super reckless and doing reckless ass shit, lets all the fucking zombies out of the barn. Like,
Judy, David can't protect you. He can't make the tough calls, Judy.
This movie inspired season 3 of The Walking Dead.
Oh man, they end up on a farm. This movie takes place on a farm.
In defense, this entire movie is a farm. This whole town's just a farm.
Oh man. Yeah, I like it though.
Yeah, so I gave this movie a 3.2.
Okay.
And I'm going to say overall, yeah, it's a good movie. Thought it was executed well. Like, I like the overall premise of the story. I thought the practical effects that we did get were really good. Most of my complaints come down to writing. I feel like the characters were very predictable. I feel like a lot of the situations, like we were talking about plot armor, I feel like a lot of it's predictable. They get in all these crazy situations where somebody almost dies, and it's that they're gonna get saved at the last minute. It's just one of those movies where you feel like you know it. And as far as the characters being predictable, like the really good sheriff that has to do bad things to save his family, and his sidekick who dies fighting for him. I felt like that was predictable. The ending. The ending, I've already addressed it, so I'm not going to say a bunch of shit that I wrote. Them not addressing the knife through the hand and David being infected was just super aggravating to me, that they don't even like address it at all.
Well, the government kind of addresses it because now they're like,
well, the government was going to kill him whether the knife thing happened or not, but the fact that they never address it in the movie, or even if they would have gave us something small, like he starts to act a little reckless towards the end to make you think he might be infected, I would have taken that, but they didn't. They didn't at all. And I will say, like we talked about in the beginning, this movie does have some scary scenes in it here and there, but at times it felt more like an action movie with infected people than it did a horror film. But outside of the writing downfalls, I think the movie itself was executed very well. Like, as far as acting, cinematography, the way the shots were done, special effects, I thought all that was executed really well. My downfalls definitely come just with the writing.
all right, well, that's pretty much it for us. Once again, we thank you guys for listening. Please give us a follow or a like if you enjoy the show. Check out the website and check out the socials. Tell a friend, a family member, or your favorite government biological scientist about the show. We hope to see you next time. Any last words?
Make sure to catch Chris David Angel disappear.
Oh, rest in peace, Russell, man.